what? Are you guys there? So sorry for the delay. Let me make sure I have everybody joining. Oh, Darcy, there you are. Okay. Sorry about that, my friends. Whew.
Hello.
You couldn't log on because I was stuck at a red light.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't my computer.
Like, what is going on? Yes. No, it was me. I had a meeting out of town, and of course, the person I was interpreting for did not show up until right when I needed to leave, so it was one of those days. Whew. But we made it. All right, let me see here. Going. And I'm going to show you, I did a little bit of research, some more research on idioms. Again, for the day of the exam, we can pretty much count on the fact that there will be idioms on our test. The multiple choice examples, if we do not recognize the idiom, will really provide no clear answer. So the strategies we've discussed are, to increase our familiarity with idiomatic phrases to the degree that we can reasonably now before the exam. And then on the day of the exam, to remember not to fall apart when we are confronted with things we have to guess on, because it's just a fact of how the exam works. It's not the best use of our time to try to memorize, 7,000 idioms before the day of the test. So there probably is going to be something that throws us for a loop. We just have to be ready to do our best with it and then go on about our day. So here's an example of what we might see. Esa juez siempre hace alarde de sus conocimientos. Esa juez siempre hace alarde de sus conocimientos. I can't see you guys anymore because I have this on full screen.
I think it's D.
D.
Like dog.
D is in dog. Okay. Siempre menciona sus conocimientos. All right.
I think it's B.
B is in boy. Siempre presume sus conocimientos. All right.
I was going to say B as well, because alarde, doesn't that mean to boast of his connections? Mm-hmm. Because that article you gave us, and actually I learned that word about President Trump. And,
wow.
And his alarde.
And that was so by design. No, that's a fabulous accident. Wonderful. Okay, so on your exam, there's a couple different strategies that you can use when you look at multiple choice. A lot of times the answers are kind of related to one another, and you can use that to help you eliminate options. So for example, presume and menciona are sort of related in that they're speaking of, and then minimiza and evita hablar de are related in that they both kind of create this idea that she tries not to talk a lot about all of her knowledge, right? So by trying to identify the relationships between possible answers, you can hedge your bets on what to eliminate and what to stay with. At the end of the day, we're still stuck with presume and menciona, right? But the answer here is presume. Presume is like saying brags about, and so is hace alarde de. So for today, add this to your flashcard deck as one of those that now we know what it means. We know a synonym for it in Spanish, and we'll just do our best to remember it on test day. All right? Lamentablemente, el trabajador, that should say trabajador social hizo la vista gorda en el caso del niño maltratado. All right?
I would say ignoró, porque hizo la vista gorda is to look the other way.
Ignoró, hizo la vista gorda. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so good. We can see that all of the options make sense in here. And so really our only bet is to try to kind of, like I said, identify which ones relate to each other and see if that can guide us at all. And in the absence of that, just go with what sounds the best and then forget it. Keep moving. Finally, a los que maltratan a su pareja hay que pagarles con la misma moneda. Hay que multarlos, hay que responsabilizarlos con los mismos castigos, hay que darles el mismo tratamiento, hay que proporcionarles tratamiento costoso.
I would say C, darles el mismo tratamiento.
Yes. Good job. Good job. These were not as challenged. Last week's were a little bit more obscure, perhaps. So, good. All right. Can you think of an equivalent in English? How would you translate this?
A taste of his own medicine.
I like that. Very good. We should give those who abuse their partners a taste of their own medicine. That might be what it would sound like. Excellent. I'm going to write that one down and memorize it myself. I appreciate it. Okay, so there's our little dose of dichos y refranes. Next time I'll try to do that for you in English. Last week I was very embarrassed to have forgotten that I had promised 2 weeks ago to look at the fancy English grammar quiz that I had posted for you guys on Facebook to talk about it today. So I prepared that for you today, and I have to let you know that that quiz had a resource in it. Let me find it. I ordered it right away and got it on my Kindle. Basically, that quiz cited an interesting book in English. Even though I think that the Blue Book of Grammar we've been working out of is really good in the sense that it's very practical. This book, if you're at all interested, if you're still struggling with English grammar, you might want to pick it up and just have it as something to read. Just read through it like you would a regular book, and let yourself absorb some of the information that's in it. You can turn things that you think could be useful into flashcards for yourself like you've been doing with your other grammar books, but you could also just get it for something to be reading in your spare time. It's called Garner's Modern English Usage. Garner's Modern English Usage, and the Kindle version was about $20. I have this Kindle. I don't love it to pieces the way lots of people say they love their e-readers. I do love it because you can get a lot of titles quickly. One thing I don't like is that it's hard to navigate through like reference material. It's a lot faster just with a paperback book you can look through. But you can get it tonight, start reading it. It was a pretty interesting resource. I sure learned a lot. So the quiz that you guys looked at perhaps a couple weeks ago is from this website. And like always, I'll post the presentation for you so that you can access these links. And so I took some of the concepts and I reworked them into usage questions similar to what you might see on the exam. First of all, though the attorney went into eloquent detail in her brief, the crux of her argument was that the officer made the exact same series of mistakes on both occasions. So the underlined portion is what you could possibly be required to reword to adhere to the grammatical standards of a language. So what do you guys think should be there in place of the exact same? If anything, you can always choose no change on the test.
I would say A sounds slightly better, made exactly the same series of mistakes on both occasions.
Okay, so we've got an A. Any other thoughts?
And made the same exact.
I think they all work.
Right?
So I guess I would say no change.
Okay. Which is I'm glad you bring that up, Raquel, because that's a good strategy for the test. Only one of these can be right. So if you're faced with a series that all sound okay, we're working under the clock, you don't readily know a rule that contradicts anything you see on the page, go for no change and keep moving. In this particular example, however, according to this author, A is the correct answer. So the way I speak, I would have said the same exact series of mistakes as a regionalism. And the author says that this is fine. All of these are fine for spoken English, but for formal written English, we would want exactly the same. So now, for the purposes of the exam, I think if they wanted to use this example, remember they have to be black and white about it, they would choose a context that would make it very clear that this is a written document. So somehow you would have a sense that this is being lifted out of a legal brief or an article of some kind, therefore making exactly the same the only answer in this very specific context. So Garner, I think that's why it's called Garner's Modern English Usage, he's the author, says that the exact same is a lazy truncation of exactly the same. So the proper phrase is exactly the same, and over time we've shortened it in spoken English, and then regionally perhaps we've switched it the same exact, but the written formal version should be exactly the same. So file this in your brain as just something to know. Try not to obsess over it too much. And if you see this on the test, definitely don't obsess over it too much. Choose what is right according to what you remember at the time. Remember that the test writers have to go by what is written, what is accepted in reputable sources about English. So you can always, if you were to miss that and they were to say no change, they're all correct. If you were to want to try to fight over an appeal, this is very difficult, I know, but if you wanted to appeal, you could always know in the back of your head that you can rely on Garner's Modern English Usage grammar book to justify your response. Okay, here's another one. According to the law professor's assessment, the appeals court judge was as big a bigot as the lower court judge. So, was he as big of a bigot as? Was he as bigly bigoted as? Was he a bigger bigot than? Or no change?
It's as big of a bigot as the lower court judge. A.
Other calls?
A.
I would say A as well.
Okay, A is sounding good to all of us. All right, there's a reason for that, and the reason is that it's common in spoken English, but this is another one where formal written English requires another rule. So the of that we add in there is actually not correct if we're talking formal English. So it should be no change. So when you're comparing two things, saying one is as adjective as the noun, you do not need to add the of in there. Okay? Surprise to me too. This is not how I speak, but now it'll be how I write. Okay. So I think the formula that was in this grammar manual was as plus adjective, a noun, as. So it's as, and the stuff in the middle. Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
What was the answer? Was the answer A?
The answer was D, no change.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed it.
That's okay.
It was A?
It was D. D is in dog.
Oh.
No change. So when you're comparing an adjective and two nouns with this adjective, you do not need the of in it. So you would say as big a bigot as mean a teacher as excellent an interpreter as.
I could have sworn it was A. Okay, well, thank you.
And that's the trouble, is that it is A, Priscilla, when we're speaking about casually spoken English. But what you can expect in the exam is English that's a little bit affected, English that's a little bit fancier and more formal than what you may have heard people saying your whole life. The same in Spanish. They're holding us to a prescriptive standard of language, meaning they're testing you on how well you know what grammarians say you're supposed to say. They're not yet testing us on whether or not we're speaking properly. They just want to know if you recognize what the proper is. And again, I'm sorry for another typo in that one. I'll try to fix these. It should say assessment with 2 S's. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, take a look at that rule. Add it to your flashcards. As, adjective, a, noun, as. Okay, this is a legal term that's commonly confused, misspelled, messed up. All right? So, I, the lesser herein named, agree to lease to Jennifer R. Lord the property at 401 Birch Street for the period of November 1st, 2018 through November 30th, 2019 under the terms and conditions below. Should the underlined portion read leaser, lesser, lessee, or no change? What do you guys think? I know, it's hard.
I think it's no change.
Okay. What does lesser mean? What does this even mean?
The person who's leasing the place to the, like the landlord, I guess,
Exactly.
basically.
Right. So we're looking for lesser in the sense of the landlord, the property owner who is granting someone the right to rent this property. Okay. You would think, if English were a normal language, that lease, since it's spelled L-E-A-S-E, the person giving the lease would be the leaser with an E-A. But Raquel, you're correct. This is no change. So do add these two terms, lesser and lessee, or maybe it's even pronounced leaser and leasee. I don't know. I'd have to investigate a little bit better. Add them to your flashcards so that you start to recognize the proper spelling. A, the leaser like this does not exist. B, the lesser is a word of comparison, the lesser of the two. Less, el menor, I guess. El que tiene menos, the lesser. So this is a correct word, but it's not correct in this context. The one that's correct in the context is in the presentation already. Okay? Okay. This one's another one that threw me for a loop. The state list of certified interpreters is composed of 82 members, most of whom work a second job to make ends meet. So, is composed of 82 members. Is comprised of, consists in, composes, no change.
I would say D, no change.
Okay. Other thoughts? You guys with Darcy on that one?
I'm also
questioning
thinking
everything. I know it's not B or C.
Okay.
I'm questioning everything, so it might be A.
Yeah, I was thinking either A or D.
Yeah.
Right.
Agree.
Okay. I think we are. I think we're all on the fence with that one. And I can tell you that when I took this quiz online, I went for A, is comprised of. And that's incorrect. The correct version of this is composed of, and I'm going to look for the author's explanation to help us have an eloquent understanding of why this is. Now, if C had said comprises, then we would have had an issue because both comprises 82 members and is comprised of, no, both comprises 82 members and is composed of 82 members are correct, both of them. Is comprised of is not. So come on. This is what I mean by saying that it's hard to find where you're going on a Kindle. Almost there, guys. Compose. Okay. See, comprise. Okay, the author says, correct use of these words is simple, but increasingly rare. And this is a side note I'll offer. Over time, languages change and shift, and our usage rules actually become the proper rule. However, on an exam like this, again, we need to err on the side of being conservative. We've got to know our stuff, and then we've got to kind of put aside the voice that says, well, that's how my mom says it, so it should be correct, and go with, well, this is what the grammar author book, for why ever we listen to this guy, who knows why, says, so this is where I'm gonna place my bets on this particular exam. So, correct use of these words is simple but increasingly rare. Compose, parts compose the whole. The whole comprises the parts. The whole is composed of the parts. The parts are comprised in the whole. Comprise, the more troublesome word in this pair, means to contain or to consist of. So you can say the list comprises 82 members. Or you can say is composed of 82 members. But you can't say is comprised of. Okay? The phrase is comprised of is increasingly common, but has long been considered poor usage. It was not a frequent collocation until about 1950. Replace it with some other more accurate phrase. Okay, so if he's saying, okay, this phrase that hasn't been used since that has been used since the 1950s is still not okay, we know that this guy is super traditional, and so his opinion might very well be what our test writers would adhere to. This group comprises the 160,000 uninsured residents of Nassau County. That's an example of how it should be read. Moreover, the crowd in the mysterious room was composed of adults, and Harry knew there were not nearly that many teachers at Hogwarts. So it should be was composed of. The Rhode Island Wind Ensemble is, oh nope, the Rhode Island Wind Ensemble comprises 50 professional and amateur musicians. Or the Rhode Island Wind Ensemble has 50 professional and amateur musicians. So if you see this on the exam, let a red flag ring in your head right away. Okay, this is something that there's definitely something that could be an error here. And in our months prior to the exam, devise a way to study this. Remember, basically the rule that this author says here, the parts compose the whole, and the whole comprises the parts. So the whole is composed of parts. So your shortcut can be to say, okay, I can say it comprises or it is composed of, but it is comprised of doesn't exist. That might be our shortcut, our shorthand. Okay. Oops, I should have underlined rein in on this. The judge, unimpressed with the defense counsel's outburst, told her to rein in her rhetoric. I'm going to underline it for you right now. Okay.
I would say D, no change.
Okay.
I think it's C. I think it's C.
C, rein in. Okay. Other calls? The answer to this one is C. So for this idiomatic phrase, when we're discussing reining in, think of horses, and horses have reins. So this is where it comes from, is the idea of, whoa, reining in your horse, slowing that horse down. We think oftentimes that it's reign is in like a king's reign, but it's actually the former. So C, rein in, as in a horse's reins. 6, our legal system is designed to free the innocent and grant the wicked their just deserts.
No change, just desserts. Or well, oh gosh.
I know, right? That's what I said, Darcy. I was like, oh my gosh, do I even speak English? I don't know.
I know. You know, I would have to say, actually, now that I think more, I would say A.
Mm-hmm. Any other calls?
I think it's D.
You think it's D? Okay. Priscilla, the answer is D, no change. All right. Now, the issue at hand here is probably the pronunciation of desserts, because we know from our ear that it's just desserts. That's how we practice it, right? And we know that 1S is desert. So we're not saying they're just deserts, so it can't be this one, can it? Actually, in this phrase, the word desserts, plural, comes from the word deserve. So it's like, I guess, a noun that would kind of be similar to saying they're just deservings. And that's why 1S is proper, because it has a different, this form of the word has a different heritage than desert, as in the geographical feature. Okay, so just desserts is 1S. Now we know. All right. Though not legally married, many of our clients cohabitate for years. What is it? Cohabit, cohabitate, cohabit, no change.
No change.
Okay. I think this is one that with time will change, because I agree cohabitate is said in my area. The actual verb that we all should be saying and absolutely writing is cohabit, as odd as it sounds. So though not legally married, many of our clients cohabit for years. It's like saying inhabit. We don't say inhabitate. We say inhabit, cohabit.
Wow.
I know! I was like, do I love you, Mr. Gardner, who wrote this grammar, or do I hate your guts? I can't decide yet. Oh gosh, we started talking about this last week, and this is one that I've never used properly in all my years as an English speaker. We just don't say it properly in my region, in my family, whatever it is. So let's get to the bottom of this one. The assault occurred while the victim lay on the couch in the perpetrator's living room.
I would say A.
Okay. Other votes?
I think it's no change, but I really have no idea.
I always have trouble with these lay and laid. I'm not sure. I would guess A, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you guys remember verb charts from any formal Spanish class you've had, where you write out the verb conjugations, and probably if you learned English in a classroom setting? I would recommend for these verbs to draw out a verb chart on a flashcard or on a piece of notebook paper. Because what gets us confused is the conjugations of these verbs. So like last week, we talked about how to lie can mean obviously to tell an untruth, but it can also mean to lie down, to recline. Okay, so we've got to lie, as in to recline. And then we have the word to lay, which means to place. The only reason that we get these all confused is that the past tense of to lie, as in to recline, is lay. So we just get all confused. In my region, to lay down, I guess, like to to recline, we say to lay down. We don't say to lie down. It sounds weird. I always think it sounds incorrect, like someone's trying to be British or something. I hate it. But it's actually the correct way to say it. And then if it's the past tense, we say he laid down. So the assault occurred while the victim laid on the couch. But the proper conjugation for to lie in the past tense is lay. I lay, she lay, he lay, etc. Okay? Let's see if we can find.
What was the answer? It was A?
It was no change.
Oh, it was no change. Okay.
It was no change because it was the past tense of the verb to lie. Let's see if we can look up. I'm going to do to lie down. Conjugation chart, to lie down. Let me see if I can make this big for you guys. Can you see it? Do you see a web page on yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. So this is where it gets all confusing, is that if we're talking about reclining, we need to be saying, or we need to be choosing on the exam, the verb to lie. And the conjugation in present is I lie, you lie, she lies, we lie, you lie, they lie. Okay? But it gets confusing in the past because we get to I lie down, you lie, he lie, we lie, they lie. All right? Let me peek at my chat here and make sure. Oh, good. Okay. Cool. So that's what's getting us so confused. So when you see a question over lay and lie, your first step is to figure out what the meaning is. Are we saying to recline or are we saying to place? Okay? If we were saying to place, then we have to use the word to lay, and that has a different set of conjugations. If the meaning is to recline, then we go through our brain and figure out, okay, what's the conjugation I'm supposed to be seeing here? And is it appearing correctly? So on this one, the answer would be yes, it's appearing correctly because we know it occurred in the past. We need the past tense form of the verb, which is lay. Clear as mud, huh?
And when wouldn't it be a laid?
When would it be a laid? If the meaning, Priscilla, it would never be laid if the meaning is to recline. That's the simple answer. The only time it would be laid is if you're trying to say placed. So I laid my keys on the counter and then he came at me and punched me in the face. That's when it would be laid because we're using the meaning of to place something. Makes sense?
Okay, I had them confused.
Yep. I think that's where the essence of the confusion comes from. Let me see. Conjugation of the word to lay. Let's see if we can see it here. Here it is. Okay, so when we have the meaning of placing something, no kind of relaxing and repose, but setting something down, then it's I lay, you lay, she lays, we lay, you lay, they lay. Or if it's in the past, I laid, you laid, it laid, we laid. So you can hear when you think about the meaning, how it would, if you know the meaning, how it would not make sense to say I laid, because this would mean the assault occurred while the victim laid on the couch. But you're like, laid what? Laid the blanket, laid the books, laid the, dinner tray, what? Is that making sense to everybody?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So that's the issue with those nasty verbs. First step is to figure out the meaning. Second step is to drill yourself on the respective conjugations for each verb according to its meaning. Third step is to see if the conjugation is correct for the meaning that is meant in the sentence, and then choose accordingly. Okay. So here's another one. I'm going to make that a little bigger for you guys. The assaults occur whenever the victim lies on the couch in the perpetrator's living room. So is it whenever the victim lies on the couch, or is it lays, lies, has laid, no change?
I would say A.
And that's how I would say it too in my house with my family. That's the usage.
Then it's D. I'm sorry, D, no change.
You got it. Because with the meaning of the context, we know we're going for the to lie, as in to recline, and the present tense of that is lie. Lies, lie, 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 lie. All right? So that's what we're seeing here. So, Darcy, lays, if you were to say that, it would be just like my last example of, okay, now that we understand the meaning behind lays, then we should think lays what? Whenever the victim lays his keys on the couch, lays the book on the couch, lays the blanket on the couch, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the confusion is coming with figuring out which verb is supposed to mean what, and divorcing ourselves from the way we've used it our whole life, figure out the way fancy people use it, what the meaning is, and then remember our conjugations. Because that's the trouble, is they overlap. And I think that's how come the usage has evolved in the way it has. So anyway, the jury was taken back by the bravado shown during the defendant's testimony. The jury was taken back by the bravado shown during the defendant's testimony. A, taken aback. B, taken aback. C, talking back. D, no change.
B, taken aback.
Yes. This is something that can be confusing when you're listening if you haven't heard this idiomatic phrase before, but the proper idiomatic phrase is taken aback. Taken aback, B, means shocked or surprised. Whoops. Shocked or surprised. Taken back does exist, but it means like to return. Like I have taken the movie back to the video store, or I have taken my blouse back because it didn't fit, to return. Taken back does not exist. You may hear it, but it's not considered a standard English phrase. Okay? Okay, so that came from the quiz that will be in this under this link. So feel free to go back to it and quiz yourself. See if you remember this stuff, because these aren't lifted directly from the quiz. They're just informed by the concepts they were asking about on it. Remember, the proper formal term is exactly the same. Everything else is a truncation of it, a shortening of it. Remember, it's as big a something as, okay? So it's as. The of is just a colloquial addition. It's not considered a proper written term. So keep an eye out for that on the exam. Lesser with an O is the proper term for landlord. Less E with a double D. Double E is the proper term for renter. You can say comprises, and you can say is composed of. But for the purposes of the exam, do not vote for is comprised of. No. Rein in, think of reign, horse reign, not king and queen's reign. Just desserts is only one S because it comes from deserve. Cohabit is the proper verb for now. It will probably evolve before long. While the victim lay on the couch, people lay in the past tense, or they lie down in the present tense. And then taken aback is our idiomatic phrase. Okay, so those are some good finer points of English grammar. Let's move on. Let me see here. Okay. During the week, I asked you to take a look at the editorial that I posted from Columbia. Lynette specifically had questions about what does he mean by private armies and irregular armies, and what is this all about? I really liked this article as an exercise because it seems complex, and I think it to fully understand it, to get it to be able to explain it to everybody else requires a bit of background knowledge, or at least research into what was going on in Columbia. And this might very well happen to us on the exam. If you remember the free paradigm exam that's posted, there's one on nuclear energy, there's one on some kind of divorce decree. They're random information that we just might not have the background knowledge on. So it's important to press ourselves and read stuff that we don't know a lot about to get precisely that, the practice in dealing with what it's like to have to comprehend an article we don't know a whole lot about until we read it. So what I did was I did my very best to come up with some comprehension questions to this article for you. So I'm going to read it out loud because we'll have people that are just listening to the audio. They won't have the benefit of looking at what's on the screen. But you'll also see it on the screen, and then I'll have a comprehension question. So, Cristo y los capitalistas, estos sobre todos los grandes, poco tuvieron que ver con la organización de ejércitos irregulares. Here's an example of a comprehension question. ¿Qué se puede inferir sobre las opiniones del autor con base en el título del editorial? ¿Qué se puede inferir sobre las opiniones del autor con base en el título del editorial? A. Que por culpa de los cristianos y los capitalistas hay paramilitares hoy en día. B. Que la organización de los ejércitos irregulares se debe a las empresas grandes. C. Que la guerrilla existe por razones distintas a las actividades cristianas y empresariales. Okay, don't answer quite yet. ¿Qué se puede inferir sobre las opiniones del autor con base en el título del editorial? Again, here's our title. Cristo y los capitalistas. Estos, sobre todo los grandes, poco tuvieron que ver con la organización de ejércitos irregulares. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll ignore my phone. But, what do you guys think? ¿Qué se puede inferir?
I would say sí, que la guerrilla existe por razones distintas a las actividades cristianas y empresariales.
Okay. What do you?
Actually, I take that back. I think it's B.
Okay.
Because it really has nothing to do with actividades cristianas. So that's, no, I think it's B.
Okay. We got a B. Other calls?
I mean, I feel like it can't be A.
Right. Because that's pretty much contradictory to what we're reading. So that's nice. At least there's one obvious one, right? Okay.
And I think, just like Darcy said, I mean, C doesn't make sense. Although, I mean, I don't love B, but I guess it must be the right choice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
And that's kind of where we end up on the test sometimes, is like, I'm just going to go with this one. All right. My thought in writing this, and I'm new at writing these, is C, because what I'm attempting to say here is that it exists por razones distintas, different from Cristo y los capitalistas. So yes, the rest of the article doesn't talk much about Christianity necessarily, which is why, for me, C worked as an inference, because we can infer just from those first few words that in his view, la guerrilla exists for reasons beyond Christianity and business activities. But that's the trouble with these, is they're just like, Okay, one thing I want to tell you about that as I was writing these, it's informative. If you guys have the time to sit down and try to compose comprehension questions to an article like this, go for it. It's really, really challenging, and it might help you kind of get a sense of what a test writer goes through, kind of get in their heads a little bit, which might help you understand how they're structured and strategize about what to choose. You do not have to do that for every single article you read. It just might be something that you could challenge yourself with and see what you learn from that exercise. Basically, when you write a multiple choice question, you have to have one answer that you know is right, and then you have to have at least one other answer that's called a distractor, one that would be feasible, especially if you read it superficially. You want to make sure the right answer isn't super obvious all the time. So you're going to use things like guerrilla instead of the word ejército irregular, for example. And then with your distractors, you may be more inclined to pull words right out of it, because the readers are going to be like, oh, I saw cristianos and I saw capitalistas right there in the title, so it has to be A, or, whatever logic they may go through. So kind of keep that in mind, is that sometimes lots of times the right answer is not going to contain words lifted directly out of the reading article. It may contain synonyms or concepts rephrased in a different way, because we're trying to probe how much of the greater meaning you understood. Okay, next paragraph. So take some time to read it. Si se asume que la causa central del conflicto es la pobreza y la desigualdad, lo lógico es buscar responsabilidades en quienes concentran el capital. Nada raro entonces que se quiera traer a los empresarios de manera genérica a la justicia transicional. Se trata en realidad de la adopción de un ritual cristiano en que alguien debe asumir la culpa de un pecado y expiarlo sin importar que no lo haya cometido. Igual que se asume la culpa de haber matado a Cristo hace 2000 años para merecer la salvación. So, I have to say, another thing I like about this article for our purposes is that it seems to have sort of disparate comparisons, you know, or like subject matters that feel very almost academic, you know, like reading into the deeper meaning and symbolism of everyday life type stuff. You know, I think that type of writing is important for us to get as much practice as we can reading, because it can be tough to unravel and understand. ¿Qué opina el autor sobre la tendencia de culpar a las empresas grandes por la desigualdad económica? Okay. Que las empresas deben asumir la responsabilidad porque es lo correcto según las doctrinas cristianas. B, que es natural querer buscar quien asuma la culpa por un mal social. C, que la búsqueda de un chivo expiatorio es ilógico.
I think it's B, because he's not condemning them for blaming the companies, but he's explaining why it's not that simple.
Okay, so we got a B vote. Anybody leading out for any of the other ones?
Definitely not A. I think it is B as well.
B is what I was going for as the author of this. C, the reason I put chivo expiatorio there is as a distractor, because we have something about pecado y expiarlo and all that stuff. So be on the lookout. Sometimes when the author takes words that look similar, it's specifically to distract you. Que las empresas deben asumir la responsabilidad porque es lo correcto según las doctrinas cristianas. We do talk about Christianity, but again, that's a distractor because he never really says anything along the lines of this is the correct thing to do. He is saying it's normal, it's natural, but he's not saying it's right or wrong in this portion of his editorial. Okay? Another technique that you guys are hearing those of us who gravitate toward English as our stronger language doing is translating these questions. I know that we're working with a limited amount of time on test day. So you don't have all the time in the world to leisurely translate everything that you see on the page into your stronger language. But for particularly difficult portions where you look at it and you feel like, I have no idea what that just said, remember translation as a technique. Just, okay, you know, take a deep breath, forget all your tension, and go word for word. That because of or at the fault of Christians and capitalists, there are paramilitaries today. And then you can go back. Does he ever say anything, about paramilitaries? You know, that sort of a technique may get you out of trouble. Okay? All right, let's move on. El tema es que los capitalistas, sobre todo los grandes, poco tuvieron que ver con la organización de ejércitos irregulares, mucho menos estuvieron en el origen y o moldearon el paramilitarismo. La razón no fue altruista, fue simplemente que las principales empresas capitalistas del país estaban ubicadas en grandes ciudades donde la amenaza de la guerrilla y el control paramilitar era menor. Según el autor, sería lógico concluir que las empresas capitalistas principales del país evitaron participar en el establecimiento de los ejércitos irregulares por razones éticas. No, porque los capitalistas de más mérito no tuvieron que ver con la creación del paramilitarismo. Sí, porque observan principios basados en los rituales cristianos. No, porque su ubicación geográfica las disuadió de asistir en la formación de los ejércitos irregulares.
I believe it's C, because it was not a benevolent thing. It's just that their geographic location did not give them any reason to be interested in the formation of these paramilitaries.
Okay. Other ideas? You can see that my crutch as a new reading comprehension exam writer is to like lean on the same distractor every time. So you're welcome. I'm sorry that the exam won't be that way. They'll have controllers to make sure that the distractors really are distracting every time. All right.
Can you flip back to the questions again?
I think what I was going for here is C, but A is very difficult to distinguish between. I think I, as the author, what I was leaning for is that this says no tuvieron nada que ver con la creación del paramilitarismo, and our author says poco tuvieron que ver con. I based this strategy in something I was working on with Priscilla, which was an Arizona practice exam, and the reading exercises were challenging and are challenging. And one thing I noticed is that the ones, Priscilla, that were confusing you sometimes were the ones that sounded similar to what the author had said, but there was actually in the text wording that made it more definitive one way or the other. So I suppose if this is the one point that, makes or breaks you and you chose C and the test writer says it's A, then that might be something you would want to fight about and appeal over. I know that I've mentioned the appeal a couple times. That is because given all the shenanigans that have been going on with the exam, I think it's good for you guys to be familiar with the fact that you can appeal. The fact of the matter, however, is that we are at a huge disadvantage because the exam is so opaque. You can appeal, but you're not necessarily going to know what to appeal over. Keep that in the back of your head and have that as a just something to explore. One strategy I can recommend to you, first of all, go in and concentrate, do the best that you can. When you leave the exam, write down everything that you remember about the exam. Write down what you were stuck on. Do I say when she lie on the couch, or do I say when she laid on the couch? Write all those things that you were just barely stuck on, you couldn't quite figure out. And then you can use them later on once all the emotion has died down to see if you have basis for an appeal. The whole thing about writing the exam is a no-no. It's bad for me as an instructor to suggest you do it because you have to sign something that says don't do it. However, I know of no other way to really realistically question what you dealt with on the exam. And also, I know that you guys are not writing things off the exam so later you can turn around and sell them to people or tell them to people. You're doing this for your own edification. So I think there's a difference there. But anyway, that was kind of a tangent. Let's move on to the next part. La excepción podrían ser las multinacionales mineras. Como los recursos que extraían se situaban en lugares sin Estado, eran presa fácil de los ejércitos irregulares, pero pagaron por igual a guerrillas y paramilitares y difícilmente puede decirse que tuvieron dirección orgánica de sus ejércitos. Lo importante era extraer un recurso sin importar quién tuviera el mando en la zona. Los empresarios de la periferia, en cambio, debieron sortear la guerra preocupados acerca de quién ganaba. No solo estaba en juego su capital, sino su supervivencia. Por eso los ganaderos, los capitalistas más alejados del Estado, se vincularon con mayor intensidad al paramilitarismo. Al mismo tiempo fueron, dentro del empresariado, los principales víctimas de la guerrilla. ¿Qué contraste vemos entre las mineras multinacionales y los ganaderos? Las mineras multinacionales tuvieron que aliarse con los paramilitares para poder sacar los recursos de Colombia, mientras los ganaderos no establecieron alianzas con ningún ejército irregular. B. De todo el empresariado, los ganaderos sufrieron el mayor índice de victimización a manos de la guerrilla, mientras las mineras mantuvieron lazos con las dos contrapartes. Mientras las mineras multinacionales eran presa fácil para los ejércitos irregulares, los ganaderos se vincularon con mayor intensidad al paramilitarismo.
I would say B.
Y de todo el empresariado, los ganaderos sufrieron el mayor índice de victimización a manos de la guerrilla, mientras las mineras mantuvieron lazos con las dos contrapartes. Anybody else think something else?
I'm thinking C, but I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll go back and look. We kind of know it's not A because we know for sure that the ganaderos did, in fact, have some kind of alliance with an army of some sort, right? Let's go back where it says presa fácil. Eran presa fácil de los ejércitos irregulares, ¿ya? I think I meant to switch that one around. I think, and I'll go back and rewrite this for when I post this. What I wanted to do was say los ganaderos eran presa fácil para los ejércitos irregulares, or something along those lines. Because I think it does say that they did. So both B and C are correct. Down here, oh, B, what I was trying to do was show you how sometimes the answer is reworded. You have to read between the lines a little bit, because we know that of the entire business world, the livestock business people were the victims of the guerrilla, but it never says victimización in here. All right. So this is an example of something that will be weeded out of the exam, that there just won't be able to be two that are right, but lo siento. I'll fix that. Okay. Finally, pero es importante hacer un par de precisiones. Por un lado, la ganadería era una de las formas capitalistas más atrasadas del país. Ganaderos como el Gordo García y Kiko Gómez difícilmente clasifican como clásicos empresarios capitalistas. Por otro lado, la lógica de otro tipo de capitalismo se impuso. El narcotráfico tenía la mayor cantidad de recursos para financiar el paramilitarismo y la mayor necesidad de impunidad para dirigirlo. No es el propósito aquí exculpar a los ricos de Colombia, sino recalcar un punto obvio que la lógica cristiana impide ver. El desarrollo del capitalismo en áreas periféricas y marginales es el mejor antídoto contra el control social que ejercen los ejércitos privados. And Lynette, you had asked, is ejércitos privados, I think, did you say, is it a synonym of paramilitares? And I think what he's trying to do with this word here is more like a synonym of ejército irregular. Now that I read the whole thing.
And isn't in ejército irregular, isn't that paramilitar? Or would those be the guerrilleros?
It's both. So paramilitares and this is what I'm referring to when I say it's good to have some kind of background knowledge of Colombia in order to be able to understand this completely 100%. And so this is a good exercise because we don't necessarily have that background knowledge. for what it's going to feel like on exam day. So my understanding is that guerrillas were leftist, and they were formed, you know, and they were uprising and all that stuff. Paramilitares were formed in answer to the leftist. So they're both irregular. They're not government sanctioned. So they share that characteristic, but their political ideology is different on each side. So I believe my interpretation of what the author is saying with ejércitos irregulares and privados is he's trying to use that term as an umbrella for both types of irregular armed forces.
Okay.
Okay. Según el autor, sería lógico concluir que las empresas capitalistas principales del país evitaron participar en el establecimiento de los ejércitos irregulares por razones éticas.
Wait, we already did that one.
You did that one already? Yeah. Okay, never mind.
Okay, this one's new.
This one's new. ¿Qué paradoja es evidente en el editorial de este autor? ¿Qué paradoja es evidente en el editorial de ese autor? La sociedad quiere culpar al capitalismo de los males como la pobreza, sin embargo, el capitalismo ofrece la mejor solución a estos males. Or, a pesar de ser una fuerza maligna en Colombia, el paramilitarismo ha servido para ayudar a los ricos de la periferia. Ahora sí, a pesar de ser empresarios capitalistas, los ganaderos y las mineras multinacionales suscriben los ideales cristianos. Again.
It's A. Because that was the last line, that irónicamente el capitalismo ofrece la mejor solución. Como expandir el capitalismo a estas áreas marginales. Esto va a ser la mejor solución.
Exacto. Okay, so I think that both A and B, depending on your understanding of the article, may be, feasible answers. But the reason B would not be considered right here is that it doesn't necessarily talk a lot in the article about how paramilitaries helped the rich. They do talk about how the cattle ranchers became connected with the paramilitary, but the cattle ranchers weren't necessarily the periferia, right? Those were the ones that were close in proximity geographically to all of these uprisings, and therefore kind of had to find some kind of ally. Whereas the periferia were the guys that were off in the cities making bank, and they didn't have to worry about it too much. So the reason B is incorrect is because it's inaccurate in terms of the periferia. If this said el paramilitarismo ha servido para ayudar a los ganaderos de Colombia, then we'd have the situation from before. Both of them would be correct. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what are our takeaways from this? First of all, is that as you guys get busier and busier and the exam day looms closer and closer, if you find yourself unable to do anything, the best thing you can do for yourself is spend some time reading. The other takeaway I want you to have in your head is that the right answer is not always going to have words that are extracted directly from the article. And then finally, things like, according to the author, is it logical? Can we infer? What conclusions can we draw? Blah, blah, blah. Those types of questions are common because they're the ones that do require the deepest level of comprehension. And lastly, vocab is important. Part of what gets in the way of things when we're trying to comb through an article of this level is terminology. Like, for example, we had razones éticas on this question. but the terminology in the article, let me find it if I can, was altruista. So those are similar, related concepts, but they're not an exact repetition of the word in the article. So that's part of what makes these things challenging, because you can't necessarily look back in the article and find exact wording. So to combat all of those things, read as often as you can, continue to draw vocabulary terminology from the articles that you read, and push yourself to think deeper in the article and not always just go for like the superficial, the words that you see right on the screen. So coming up, I'll have to look back at our schedule. I think we do a month's worth of vocabulary work first in May, and then in June we'll get into reading comprehension. But let me know how this worked for you, if you were following, if it was worthwhile. That will inform what types of things we do the month of reading comprehension. Okay? I've kept you guys late. I started you guys late. Ugh, today was not my day. Thank you for your patience. And I'll post the recording. We will be in touch. And we'll go from there. Sound good?
Thank you.
Kelly.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Buenas noches. Adios.